Hi, welcome. So unfortunately, as you can probably tell from the short intro, my camera is a bit glitchy right now. I'm preparing a fix. I got a new mic and basically the mic and the camera are not working together well. So for today, we're going to just keep this short, and also you're not going to see me on screen. Instead, you'll just see the basic screen like this, but I want to give you the introduction of why that's happening that way. Now that I've done that, so this is just going to be continuous of last lecture. Last lecture, we ended off talking about a very basic website. We have this very basic website that technically exists. Now, it's a long way to go from here to our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that we spoke about the first half of last lecture. What we're going to do right now is I'm going to expand this web. We're going to expand this a little bit. And then next class, we're going to go into a lot more depth about how this thing actually works and what it does. For now, what we're going to do is we're just going to, instead of just sending back a little bit of text, we're actually going to send back a web page. Okay. So we're going to send back a web page. And in order to send back a web page, we're going to have to do quite a few little things here. So I'm going to, where is it? Okay, actually, we're going to do app.use express.json. And then we're going to do app.use express URL encoded. And then we're going to do app. One second here. I need to make sure I do this correctly. But basically what we are doing now is, before we just had the very basic Express, but Express does something called middleware, which is Express is just a tool that we're using. And what we do is we say, hey, Express, I want you to use this function and this function. I want you to use this tool and this tool and this tool. And so before the data gets to us, because the data comes in from the internet and it kind of comes to us, and then it Express processes a bunch of stuff and then sends it to our code over here, our functions, and then after it looks at our code, it sends it back. Here we go. Okay. Here, this is what I was looking for. App.use express.static public. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder, call this public. And now, whenever I would like to, inside the public, we're going to create a new file. We're going to call this index.html. And in this HTML file, I'm going to start by using Emmet, like we've discussed before, where I just use a tab key and all of a sudden I get this. And we're going to call this the home. We'll call this home page. We'll save that. And then inside of here, we're going to do, hey, welcome to the home page. Now we're going to do npm run start. And then in my browser, I'm going to go to, we're going to check our code and say, oh, we're listening at port 3000. Great. So I'm going to go to localhost 3000. And welcome to my homepage. Now, here's something interesting. If I change this and I save it and I refresh, the change actually shows up right away. The reason is, and this is like a big idea, and so I need y'all to focus. And unfortunately, I realize you can't see my hands right now, so you can't see all the moving I'm doing as I'm explaining, but pretend I'm moving. Imagine how I am moving my hands right now, because I promise you I am moving my hands to explain this. But here's the basic idea. When there's two things, and this is what you got to think about in general for programming, this is a really big idea. The question is, what's happening right now? So what happens is Node.js runs the code. Node starts up and it's like, oh, it reads all my JavaScript and it stores my JavaScript in memory. Now, one of the things about my program in memory is it says, hey, sometimes you're going to need to grab one thing you're going to do is, hey, app.use express.static public, which means whenever anyone says, hey, whenever anyone is looking for a whenever anyone is looking for a basic file, you're going to go get it from the public folder. Now, because that's the case, it means when I ask for it, that's when it gets read into the computer. So there's a difference between this, and we're just going to change this to web. Okay. This is going to be called /web. So ignore that for a second. We're going to do /web. And now if I open if we go back to the page, and if we do /web, it just says cannot get web. Why? Because this is not up to date. If I close this and I reopen it, now Express is actually up to date on, oh, this file says web over here. So if I go into my browser and I say, hey, I want to load web, hello world shows up, right? I'm going to zoom in on this a bunch, but it gives me the words hello world. But if I change the words hello world to hello from web and I save that, because the program did not reload, this page does not reload. However, this page is the index page, and the way it works in websites is the first page you come to, that's the index page. So whenever I look for a page, it looks for the index page. So what's happening right now is I'm actually loading this index page, but because every time we refresh, we reload. Like I can add a paragraph here and I can say this is a simple web application. This is the home page of our web application, whatever it says, we'll just save that. And now if I refresh, we see that line appears. So this is the important difference. My JavaScript code, because it is the web browser, because what is happening is Node.js is reading my program and it is running it in memory. And then the thing that Node.js does, and the thing that the program in memory does, is it says, hey, oh, you're looking for the index, let me give you the index, right? And this doesn't just work for the index. If we create a new file, call it, let's just call it page.html. So we're going to have a second page here, and we're going to do the same thing. Oops. All right, we're going to call this page 1. We're going to save that. And this is just going to say welcome to page 1, right? This is basically exactly the same thing, except instead of homepage, it says page 1. If I refresh this, we're still at homepage. But now if I do /page, /page.html. There we go. And this is an important detail, right? Because this is a file that we are getting. We are getting the file from our server, so we load the file every time we ask for it. So if I delete this paragraph, and after I delete this, let's say delete the paragraph and I save, and I go back to here and I refresh, that paragraph goes away. Voila! This works. Right, and if we go back to the base, go back to home, this is our basic web page, right? Now, the important thing to understand is this is just what's happening is my program, which is my web server program, is running, and that one is sending the files when my browser asks for them. Once again, this is not accessible on the web, but this is basically how a web server would work. It would be serving specific files. But the truth is we wouldn't really be sending out HTML pages. What we would really be doing is stuff like this, where instead of just using raw pages, we would instead be using app.get and post and all these other methods. And I'll talk a little bit about how HTML works when we meet in person. So that is your responsibility to ask me how HTTP works. Sorry. But the basic idea here is if we do app.get /API, let's say, right? And like, hey, this is just message, hello, right? This is sending back JSON instead of just sending back. This would send back JSON. What is What is JSON? What is JSON? JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It is a way of keeping track of data in JavaScript. It is very common on the web. It is how most of the web how most of the time we send data, especially how we send data over the internet. Because it's such a common way to send data over the internet, you'll see over here that my browser has a way of handling JSON. So this is not a fancy page that I put together. This is built into Firefox. We have a way of managing JSON, JSON or JSON, whatever you want to call it. And that's what's being displayed here. So all that I'm doing in this case is I am loading up some data. In the way that you'll often hear we talk about the back end and the front end of a website. When we talk about the front end, we talk about things like my HTML pages, and we talk about more complex things, but those are my HTML pages. When we talk about the back end, usually the back end and the front end, and this is like what I do in my day job. Like I just finished working a full day before I started recording this, and when I was working, what I was doing is I was writing things on the back end that would send JSON to the front end, and then I'm writing things on the front end that take the JSON and parse it and like understand it and read it and present it to the user in pretty ways. So what I've got there is I've got two very different things, right? I've got my back end and my front end, and my back end and front end are working together to deliver information to the user. But the way that they talk to each other is they don't actually send the full web page. Instead, what they do is they'll send the JavaScript, and the JavaScript will turn the JavaScript object notation, right? Specifically, not like a full program JavaScript, but just like information in JavaScript. And then they'll take that information and process it and pass it out to the user as pretty HTML with some CSS attached. So those are like the different methods for how a web browser will work. What we're going to do next class in person is we are going to start looking at how to, just come back here for a second. So what we're going to do next class is we are going to start actually looking into JavaScript, and not just JavaScript, but we're going to start building out this web thing a lot more. We understand the difference now between like a static page and a route, and I'm going to talk a lot more about routes and how they work. So the one program I need you to download first off is Bring Your Own Computer, because like as with this class and all the other classes, we're really going to need your own computer. The other thing I need you to get is I need you to get a program called Postman. So Postman is a program that looks like this. Hopefully the camera doesn't glitch again. I'm not going to see it if it does, but Postman is a program that looks like this. You don't have to even sign up. You can just download it for whatever browser you want to download it for whatever system you're on. You can download it and just use it. And that is really all you're going to need. And then I will explain to you how it works and what it does. But what Postman does is it acts as like a fake front end. Because right now we're very limited in the way we get data from our back end using just the browser. So what Postman does is it ups it a level to where we can do a lot more complex stuff in terms of testing our back end. And that's going to let us learn a lot more about how to program the back end and we're going to keep Postman when we move on to Python or anything else, because Postman is just a tool for testing web servers. So no matter what the language of the web server we write it in, we're always going to use Postman. So I recommend you download it, or you can I recommend you download it. I recommend you create a free account for it. But don't worry too much about the account. You can technically use it without signing into an account. More importantly is just, I recommend you download this program for next week's class. On that note, have a great week.